across the Atlantic, approaching the dark green fields of Edinburgh. Interrupting the sweep of the grassy panorama below were the dusky twinkle of red and blue holiday lights. No, wait, those were emergency vehicles lining the runway.
Come fly with me, come fly, let's fly away.
2 tickets to paradise and make it snappy.
Attention passengers, we need another volunteer.
Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff.
Hello, and welcome to Come Fly With Me and Other Travel Mischief. I'm John Lapidese, and these are my personal travel stories of adventure, mayhem, foolishness, and swinging through the jungle of life. Edinburgh for the holidays is kind of special. Beautiful, cold, dark, and twinkly, with just a touch of the looney. We got there after a crazy flight. The city was all castles, caverns, and peaty drams in festive pubs. Join us down these merry lanes. Season's greetings and a happy new year. Now here's a wee tale for you. Edinburgh. You must think we are barbarians. It was a Christmas party in Edinburgh, and I was minding my own business when the well-dressed matron suddenly leaned toward me. You must think we are barbarians, the way we send our young children off to boarding schools. At a loss, and as a guest, I shook my head. No, not at all. I love the Harry Potter books. I love Hogwarts. But I don't think she bought it. No matter, we both moved on to other conversations. It was a genteel evening in Edinburgh, Scotland. And bonny good to be here in this ancient city, anchored with its medieval castle, framed by the famous peak known as Arthur's Seat. Who could resist a city located in a realm called the Firth of Forth? As with certain cities, Venice, Jerusalem, or Vegas come to mind, you knew you had landed somewhere different in Edinburgh. Like those destinations, the city has its own look, language, and way to behave. There's a fine code of civility woven over this Scottish center of culture, education, and international art festivals. But under that silky tartan lurks a rougher fabric seen in the landscape, the climate, its history, and its people. Behind every heathery brigadoon in the hills plots the ghosts of warrior tribes and clans seething against the English invaders. It's a lively place. It had been tough making my deal to get here. My client's budget was very frugal, even Scottish in its tight-fistedness. I felt as though the Scotland Tourism Board had laid siege against my little company, and I was at the mercy of their ancient feudal instincts. Plus, I couldn't always understand what they were saying. Their terms of surrender were absolute. Here's what we get, take it or leave it. Thus vanquished, I agreed to work for a pittance of my usual fee, just so I could visit their extraordinary city. I heard you could get great deals on scotch, also tam o' shanters. So after all the economic warfare they'd put me through, it was ironic that they landed business class seats for us. Perhaps it was their way of throwing the laddie a bane. Through the years, as I've set my backside down in coach, business, and first class, I've always sported my standard uniform of safari shirt, lots of pockets, and blue jeans, not to mention shoes and always socks, neat and practical. Hey, it's the 21st century. Dress shirts and jackets are for bar mitzvahs, court, and the big sleep. But somewhere along the flight, I noticed a smartly dressed lady a few seats away, eyeing me suspiciously. There was clearly something about me that troubled her. I'm pretty certain I didn't look like a terrorist. Was it the epaulets on my safari shirt that were threatening? I tried to disarm her with a smile. It wasn't but a few minutes later when a slightly uncomfortable flight attendant came by and shared that one of the passengers was upset with me. I was dressed in jeans, in business class. Oh, this was a first. Well, what did she want me to do? Take off my pants? March back to coach and hang out at the lavatory? The flight attendant hadn't a clue, but the woman insisted I should be told. My fellow crew member Marcella was seated nearby and heard the exchange.
I probably contributed even more to it because I looked at my baggy USC sweatpants and was like, oh yeah, this probably doesn't look great for business class.
But we just laughed it off. I thought it would be a funny bit to retell sometime. So what do you think? Did this silly kerfuffle portend the dress code in Edinburgh? Would I have to go shopping at an airport store for a McGregor hunting jacket and tie? This was the most serious matter we would entertain crossing the Atlantic until we approached the dark green fields of Edinburgh. There, unexpectedly, the serious stakes went up. Interrupting the sweep of the grassy panorama below were the dusky twinkle of red and blue holiday lights. No, wait, those were emergency vehicles lining the runway. Our captain filled in the puzzle. Seems they weren't totally sure about our landing gear, as in did it fully extend and lock, thus enabling us to land on the plane's tires instead of its belly? From the sound of his voice, the captain didn't sound overly concerned. Just a precaution, he said. But then I had to overthink the situation. Maybe he was trained to speak in a very calm way in very bad situations, when in fact he was up there in the cockpit, clenching the yoke in a death grip and soiling his airline pants. However, we touched down just fine. False alarm, everybody lives. Even the mean lady who judged me can go home and torment her family. Welcome to Edinburgh. Thought we'd give you a wee fright. Should old acquaintance be forgot? Ho ho ho. Haggis. Have you ever heard of it? It's a kind of pudding made of sheep's pluck. And what is sheep's pluck? Well, it's heart, liver, and lungs. Then it's mixed with oatmeal, suet, and other evil things. Although it sounds like poison, I can assure you it's far worse. But other than haggis, the fare in Edinburgh was wonderful, whether at the hotel or pubs. And the Scotch lived up to its name. There was one special distillation called As We Get It, a single malt that is bottled straight from the cask, unfiltered. No two bottlings are ever the same. Very peaty. I sipped some under the watchful eye of Angus, my sound man. The client wouldn't pay to fly my entire crew over, so I hired a couple of local lads. Everyone should at some time have a sound man named Angus. His mere presence brought a charming brogue to our sound recordings. We stood on the Royal Mile, a grand road leading up to Edinburgh Castle. The city is centered around this fearless 1,000-year-old fortress. But I am certain for some, the city is really centered around another historic fortress of refuge and sustenance. Yes, I'm talking about Harvey Nichols, the upscale 200-year-old department store. It was here at Harvey Nichols that I actually did buy a tartan tie, some scarves, and other plaid accessories for loved ones. It was also here that I came across my first paper note from the Royal Bank of Scotland. I didn't even know they had their own currency. And that's not all. They have their own parliament, and sometimes a visible disdain for their English cousins. For instance, one of my crew scoffed that their currency wouldn't even be recognized in England, to which he added some funny Scottish words about the English that sounded like a snorting hog running in a swampy bog. Still, I think I understood the gist. It was almost Christmas, and we were so far north, the light faded around 3 in the afternoon. I stepped from Harvey Nichols and gazed up at Edinburgh Castle. The trees surrounding the fort framed its ancient structure in Christmas lights. Hard to believe this seasonal postcard was ground zero to many of the wars of Scottish independence and dozens of sieges. It's said to be the most besieged structure in the UK. Now it's a tourist tableau of twinkling holiday lights.
Edinburgh holds number one spot in my head for most charming city, because I remember one morning walking from my hotel and I passed this church and it had these trees along the side of it and the leaves were bright red and the sun was just coming up, and I remember the sun on these red leaves, and I thought how lucky am I that I get to see this right now.
But as beautiful as Edinburgh's lit paths and warm welcoming pubs, there still exists here the wretched spaces of an historic dank underbelly. Deep beneath the main thoroughfares lay the remains of a subterranean city from the 17th century called Mary King's Cross. As part of our assignment, we descended to these underground remains to film them. Here lay a hell slum in tortured parallel to the illuminated world above. Families were crammed into these dark spaces with no other place to live, no light, no water, no sanitation, but plenty of crime. While some of the finest universities in Europe prospered in the city above, these urban caves were inhabited by generations of unfortunate souls. Maybe it was the weight of the dark, or the stale air, or perhaps the place was filled with ghosts, but it felt like taking a tour of your own grave. I kept looking for the exit.
I'm not claustrophobic, but being in there were points where it was so black, you could not see anything at all unless we had the camera lights on. And it was so disorienting. And they had these dummies set up throughout to show, here's a woman holding her baby, here's a doctor, and there are those creepy doctors that had those beak masks. And we turned the light on one of them, and because of how we were moving with the light, it looked like the figure itself was moving, and my brain was going crazy because it was like, is this a real person? It was like sounding the alarm of, you're in danger, this is so creepy, get out of here, what are you doing?
Okay, I think we got enough, I whispered to the crew before beating a retreat up the ancient stairs. Bumping into each other, they quickly followed me up to the light of the evening streets above. Taking in deep winter breaths, we laughed, happy to leave the spooks below. Then we stomped down the merry lanes draped with seasonal cheer, and soon retreated to a warm pub and some peaty drams. There, at the end of my journey, I took stock of the situation as I understood it. There can be a bitter wind over Edinburgh, and sometimes it is just the wind. But sometimes it's the fortunes of the centuries, pitiless domination, uneasy alliances, suffering. The good people of Edinburgh have overcome a brutal history with their love of culture, art, education, and faith that we travel ever upward. Surely that's a fine message for the season. Some years ago, a young woman down on her luck took refuge in the cafes here to seek calm and let her imagination rise to the levels this great city encouraged. She returned the favor and gave the world the gift of Harry Potter. So I would say to that matron who asked if I thought Edinburgh was a place of barbarians, well, maybe a little, but just enough to give rise to wonderful things.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and old lang syne?
Our wonderful musicians from the Fair Isles are Guifrog, Jazar, Slanshaw, Lobo Loco, Dougie Matheson, and Mags McFarlane. Thank you all so very much. And thanks to the fine people of Edinburgh, Visit Scotland, Marcella, and all of you for taking a wee stroll through these merry hills and lanes. You're listening to Come Fly With Me and other travel mischief. Come and share the love at comefly.net, where you can learn more and sign up for stuff. Our next adventure, we commune with ancient ghosts and rock legends in Paris. I'm John Lapidese, wishing you all many cups of kindness for the holidays and beyond.
But we've wandered round on many a fit sin old lang syne. We twa hae paddled in the burn frae morning sun till dine, but seas between us braid hae roared sin old lang syne. And there's a hand, my trusty fear, and gaze a hand o' thine. We'll tack our right get willy walk for old lang syne. For old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne. We'll tack a cup o' kindness yet for old lang syne.